Hey folks, my name is Sean Mua, and I wanted to do a review on personal capital. I was looking around for other reviews or feedback on the personal capital site, and a lot of people were doing reviews on personal capital, but they weren't really touching the wealth management aspect of it. They were just doing an overview of personal capital itself, the free product. And so I think a lot of people's covered that already, but I wanted to touch the wealth management a little more in depth. And so this will be my perspective of the wealth management portion. And so this is me logged into my personal capital account. When you first get started, you'll have to set up a lot of you'll have to integrate a lot of your accounts into the system. And for the most part, it's pretty easy. You just sign in and then put in your credentials, and then it will automatically start pulling all of the numbers over. And so I don't have everything in here, but I do have enough to give me a perspective of my assets. And so I got a couple checking accounts in here that I'm linked up. I have all of my retirement stuff in here. I have a credit card in here, and I have a loan for a car. Okay. So not everything's in here, but for the most part, I'm mainly tracking my investment portion. I think a lot of people compare personal capital to Mint, and I think Mint is more for budgeting perspective. Personal capital to me is much better at displaying where your investments are and how well you're doing with your investments. And so you can see here my Fidelity investment. These are my IRAs from my old employers. My Merrill Lynch is my current employer now, and my Schwab is a 529 that I open up for my kids. And so that's kind of what we're looking at today. Um, if I go to overview, there's some budgeting stuff in here. I know pretty much where everything's going as far as my budget. Um, Cash flow, yeah, this stuff I don't pay too much attention to. Really, I wanted to touch on the wealth management perspective. And so I actually signed up, and when you hit like 100K, these guys will start calling you and asking you, hey, do you want to talk to me? Hey, do you want to talk to me? Hey, do you want to talk to me? Eventually, I finally talked to Bucky, and he called me probably like 5 times. And I finally talked to him. He just gave in a 15-minute introduction about himself and about the product. And and he said, hey, I'll schedule another 30-minute interview with you to kind of deep dive into your data, into your goals. And what I can do is present to you what our recommendations are after seeing your stuff. And so the first call was a 15-minute introduction. The second call was that 30-minute deep dive where we just talked about how much money I'm making now, how much I'm saving, what my goals are, when do I want to retire, what other assets that I might have. And so if I have a house or something, he takes that into consideration. Other personal debts that I might have, like my student loan or something, he takes that into consideration. And so it's about 30 minutes worth of data gathering. And then a week later, he'll give you a call back and kind of go through what he saw in my portfolio. And so we'll take a look at this is what he presented to me. Um, 10 billion under asset. I think they grew a lot within the last couple of years. Maybe 2, 3 years ago, they were probably only in the 2 billion range. 96% retention. Their management fees are almost 1%. So that is high. If you look at the portfolio right now, it's about roughly about 200K. 200K is, I mean, 2,000 a year. Over time, that just adds up. And so some goals, some personal balance sheet, at age I want to retire. So all of this stuff, like the asset allocation, to me, I think I've been pretty good at my trying to allocate my portfolio in certain buckets. So I've thought, based on my perspective, I thought I was doing a pretty decent job. I knew there were gaps, but I thought overall I was doing a pretty good job. And so he showed me all of my asset allocation, and I said, yeah, 50% stock. That's all intentional. I do have a pretty good chunk in cash right now, and that's intentional because I wanted to do something different with that and toss more of that into the alternatives. International stock, I was at 13. That's kind of intentional. I was probably doing like 15, 10 or so. I kind of have money in different brokerages, and so me doing this in Excel over time, they just don't balance up that well. Um, these are all the sectors I'm in. So I kind of roughly knew where I was at, and this to me was no, I didn't have any surprises here. Um, as we go into his observation, he said I didn't really have a strategy. I was just kind of all over the place with my, especially with my cash. I didn't know what I was doing with my cash. Um, so he gave me his recommendation, and his recommendation, his recommendation, or the company's recommendation, it's based on what they call the Monte Carlo simulation, and so kind of running through all of the numbers into 4,000 different scenarios, and this is the best. This is what they recommend for me, right? So I should be at 56% stock, 24% international, alternative is 10, U.S. bond, international, and a little bit of cash, and not like the 20% cash that I have today. And so to me, probably the most surprising part was like I knew about this, and I mean I knew about this, and I wasn't worried about this. Um, there's some gaps here. U.S. stock, I should probably be more at. International stock, I should be a lot more at. Um, and so those are things I can change around. Alternative, I know I'm going to add more there. But the most surprising to me was probably not this slide, but the next slide. This is just showing that I should be in 80% stock, and 70% of that 80% should be in the US market. The other 20 or 30%, 20 or 30% should be overseas. Part of that in developed or mature international markets, and then a percentage of that in the emerging markets. This is how they have their alternatives set up. I was thinking more about real estate, and so I've been looking at Fundrise and Rich Uncle, and so I'm thinking about putting some money there. The bonds, I think I'm pretty heavy in bonds already. So this is to me probably the most useful out of this whole thing because I'm pretty heavy in financials and I'm pretty heavy in technology. And when in 2008, when technology gets hit pretty hard, you can go down a whole lot. And so for me, I mean, people keep on talking about that recession that's going to happen in 2020. I want to be more balanced. And so this is what they call smart weighting balance or smart weighting instead of just market cap weighting. And so if I take some chunks from the technology and some chunks from financials and then start putting it into materials or communication services to make it more balanced, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as it's more balanced, over time, it's going to give me better return over time. And so over time, it's going to give me better returns. And here's one chart that they showed from 1990 to 1919. If if I was smart weighting versus just market weighting, I would have basically 1% more, and the standard deviation is less than, I mean, a percent less, which is better, but it's not really a big difference. And so they gave you all this stuff for free, and the consultation was free. The guy was a nice guy. He was a young guy. He was a nice guy. And overall, I thought it was a good consultation. And after this, I actually spoke to a couple different ones, but I still think this is probably the best. At the end of the day, um, did I go with them? Did I move all of my money from Fidelity or Merrill Lynch to their custodian and have them manage it? And for me, I did not. For me, I think I'm close enough where I can just I can play around with the numbers, not the numbers. I can play around with the funds to get myself to where I should be very close to um where I should be. And so if you go to planning and investment checkup, you can see the gaps. I should be at this high growth state. If I want to be more conservative, I can be at the growth or moderate growth. But for my age and my time, I should be at this high growth stage. This is where I should be at as far as international, US bonds, international stocks, US stock market alternatives. I can get myself there because I have a lot of cash here that I can just start adding to alternatives. I can start adding to international stock, and then I can add to international bonds, and that should get me there, right? And so to me, I'm going to do this by myself. For someone who may not know the market that well, it might be better for them to manage it for you. But for me personally, I'm gonna try to do this myself. And so overall, I think the wealth management, the free consultation is worth your time. It's three phone calls, 15 minute, 30 minute, and then 1 hour to kind of go over everything. Um, this gives me a pretty good picture of where I'm at today and where I'm headed. I just need to make some changes on my side here, and invest in the right, whatever they are, ETFs or whatever funds that are out there to get myself to this level. Let me show you guys something else. Allocation. And so this is my allocation right now. For the most part, all the allocations are done automatically. There were some manual allocations that I had to do because some of these funds, these State Street funds, they were not on they didn't pull in the data properly, and so I had to go to like Google Finance and just manually put in what percentage of it was in US stock and what percentage of it was unclassified, and within the US stock, um, what was large cap core and what was mid cap core. And so there's a few funds that I had to do this for. One, two, three, four funds. The rest of them did that on their own. Um, Let me see if there's anything else. So for me, I'm just gonna start attacking this one piece at a time. I'm gonna move some of my cash into international bonds, and that's gonna require some research for me. I'm gonna move some cash into international stocks, and that'll take some research on my side. And most of my investments are pretty. Let's see if we can get there. Are pretty passive. Um, so if I take a look at here, no, not here. Probably holding. Most of my investments are pretty passive. So if you take a look at what I have, most or almost all of them are index. And so this is a Vanguard, a small cap index fund. I've had this fund for a long time. Over the last, I don't know, 8 years or so, small cap. Historically, it's always done better than large cap, but that has not been the case for the last 8, 10 years or so. And so this fund's done okay, but it hasn't done well. So I have another Fidelity small cap fund here. It's an index fund. I put a bunch of money into the zero large cap fund just because there's zero fees, and so there's no management fee at all. Like I said, I'm trying to get part of my portfolio into real estate, and so O is one of those REIT that pays out a pretty good dividend, and they've been paying dividends for the last 100 and so many quarters or something like that. But they've been pretty stable, and so I put some money in there for yeah, put some money in there. It's not a whole lot, maybe 5 grand. I do have some bonds. That's index. Another index here, S&P 500. These are from work, and so that's why they're separate. And then down here, bond index, international index fund. I probably got to find another Fidelity fund, or yeah, probably another Fidelity fund that's touching the international, but that's touching the emerging markets instead of just the developed markets. And so this is kind of where I'm at. I took this 40 grand out or 35 grand out in cash maybe several months ago after I changed jobs, and I haven't really done anything with them. I've been going back and forth, just talking to different people. So this year's balance hasn't been all that great, but overall, I mean, for the last 8, 10 years, I think the market's done really well for me, and that's when I started putting money in. I think that's all. You can use it for budgeting. You can use it for net worth. You can put your home in here. You can put your rental properties in here. I chose not to do that just because I didn't do it. I don't think it adds a whole lot of value um, to managing my investment funds. And so I just left it the way it is now. I do have my checking account in here, but I mean, it doesn't add a lot of value there. Something that I might do in the future, if you have an emergency fund, I don't have it linked up here, but say for example, you have 3 months of emergency fund or 6 months of emergency fund, that could be 5 grand, that could be 10 grand. I would probably put that into their high savings account that's in here somewhere. Uh, it's almost 2% return. So yeah, that's all. I just wanted to give my perspective of it. I like personal capital. Even if you just get the free stuff, I think it's worth your time to just kind of dig in here and look at your numbers. If you want to do more, then you can set up the consultation and they'll talk to you and they'll give you those 3 phone calls. And they do a pretty good job at looking at where you're at right now and what recommendations to make. At that point, it's really up to you if you want to make that investment to have them manage your money for you. I think for me, it would have been worth it if I was I was at a different point in my life where I had a bunch of like RSUs and I needed to start pulling some of those money out, and so they would have a team that would show me how to pull my money out effectively with taking the least amount of risks or taxes or whatever to help me. And so, say for example, if I had like 500K or something, and I had a couple 100K of RSU that I wanted to start selling, I think they would be helpful there. And so, if if I had that balance or if I had that portfolio, I would probably have done it. And this you can cancel anytime. You can set it up for a month and then cancel and then roll everything back. But it's just a hassle because everything here has to get transferred into a new custodian, and that takes, I don't know, 5 days or so. And then you got to set up everything over there, put you into all the right funds. And then if you want to cancel this, you have to cancel everything out and then move everything back to Fidelity. And so yeah, it's easy to cancel. You can set it up for a month and they can set it up and you can see how exactly they set it up and then you can cancel it and do it yourself. But I didn't want to go through that hassle of transferring and then transferring back and managing it. So hopefully that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to answer. But that's all for today. Thanks for watching. And then one last bit of note here. There is a $20 referral. And so if you guys sign up using my link here, you'll get 20 bucks and I'll get 20 bucks. And so it's not a bad way to start. If you do want to sign up, you can just click on the link here and sign up, and that would be helpful for me and yourself. Thanks.